monotone though. I have way more energy than he does. Could you imagine like having his ability with my energy? It'd be some really good videos. All right, so what is our starting substrate? What are we starting this process with? Before that, what do we start this process with? Here. Go here. What is that? Glucose, right? Of course. 6 carbons. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to try to do this as slow as possible so this way we understand how this nomenclature breaks down. So we know this glucose is on the outside of the cell. We're going into the muscle. What is that receptor called?
TKR.
Starts with a G. GLUT4. By the way, I'm purposely putting my markers over there so I walk, get my steps in. Sent around too much today, so we know. Tell me why you're walking back and forth so much. All right. So, that GLUT4, insulin stimulates the cell. We have a ton of glucose ready to come in. How does glycolysis start? What do we need? What speeds up reactions? Enzyme. So we need an enzyme. So in the muscle, and primarily majority of everything but the liver, hexokinase. And the liver, super tricky name, glucokinase in the liver. Majority of everything else, all the other peripherals and all the organs, hexokinase. Hexokinase. One thing I want you to start associating with the word kinase. I want you to associate money with the word kinase. So, why do I say money? Because I utilize this idea and this concept of us and ATP, us, this energy source is like our currency, right? So how many people know that it costs, or it takes money to make money? Does that mean, am I lying? You ain't lying, right? So we have to we have to deposit money, phosphates, to make money at the end. So for us to take this glucose, comes into the cell, to convert it, we have to phosphorylate it. Where do we get this phosphate from? ATP, right? So the first step cost us a phosphate. So we lose, we don't necessarily lose, we gain, but ATP loses a phosphate. Now, a couple key factors that we have to remember here. This takes energy to do that. It costs us kilojoules, right? So generally, and we don't have to really remember this, but I want us to know that this process, so what is glycolysis? Is it an anabolic or a catabolic process?
Catabolic.
Why?
Because it breaks it down.
Not necessarily, because we build up to them. But why is it considered catabolic?
Because it's separating the carbons.
That's oxidation. Why do we consider catabolic? Because at the, go ahead, we're going to go somewhere with it?
I was just saying it's breaking down a larger compound into ultimately smaller components.
But it's two constituents of the same component, so it wouldn't necessarily make it a catabolic reaction. It's catabolic because our delta G, our energy, is negative. So it costs us energy. You'll see it depicted in kilojoules over moles. That's why it's a catabolic. So by the time we get to pyruvate, which is our end substrate, we are still negative as far as energy. So it's costing us calories to break this stuff down. Does that make sense? That's why it's catabolic. Just so you know, we're not going to go to the signification of all the delta G's. Not needed. I just want us to understand that. Now, you ready for my first magic trick? Who's ready? Woo! What do we need as a cofactor to make sure hexokinase phosphorylates this next molecule?
PI3.
No. Remember I told you it's super prevalent right now of people being deficient.
Oh, B12.
No, it is.
Magnesium?
That makes it more. Yes, magnesium. So, now, I told you while we're going through this, we're going to start making implications on how certain things can be effective. How many people here have symptoms of low energy? How many people in the world have symptoms of low energy?
Most. All.
It's pretty much symptomatically a causation of everything. Now we found out that 68% of Americans have magnesium deficiencies. Do you think there's a correlation there?
Yes.
Hell yeah, there is. So now we can start making this a practical understanding of where this is in play. If you can't run through glycolysis, are you able to produce energy? Yes, but at a very slow rate. We need glycolysis because this whole pathway is very quick, and we'll get into that. Okay? That's my first magic trick. Okay? All right, so now, nomenclature. Why I love this stuff. Hexokinase. So when we see kinase, we know where there's going to be some formality of money transfer, right? Oh, this is so good. This is glucose, right? We just put glucose in the cell. We now have a phosphate, and I'm not even, so there's different types of phosphates, but for majority of them, it's PO43 to the negative power. So regardless, I'm just gonna decipher it as a phosphate, this guy, okay? I just put a phosphate on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th carbon, okay? What do you think this guy is gonna be called? This guy over here.
G3.
G6P.
Okay, so how do we decipher that? What does that G stand for? Glucose. 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 6 carbon.
Phosphate.
Now that's for you, really. That's biochemistry.
Magic trick.
It's magic for you guys to understand it. That's what's so glorious about it. It tells us what it is. And if we even drew the chemical structure, it makes even more sense, but it's complicated. But that's the cool thing about understanding this. Like when we draw it all out, it looks like someone just vomited all over the board. But when you take your time and you just start breaking it down, you're like, ah. All right, cool. So the next enzyme, I'm not too concerned about you guys remembering because this one smells funny. Strong. So this one I'm not too concerned about you remembering, mainly because I don't need you to remember every single constituent and step. Who's going medical here? Okay, you guys have to remember. This will be the rest of your life. Okay? Very important. So a lot of my buddies who went through medical school, 3 of my buddies went through medical school, this is where they struggled the most. So you get this down now, I promise you, things are so much easier. All right, so phosphohexose, oh, not a kinase, sorry, just kidding. It's an isomerase. So all this means, so it's a hexose, right? Isomerase. All isomerase means is we're shifting things in the molecule, okay? That's all it means. So not to overcomplicate it, we still have, definitely get my steps in now. Get you some, Tony. Earning my cereal. So, we didn't shift this phosphate. It's still on the 6th. But what we did is we took this aldehyde, right? We shifted this aldehyde, because glucose is an aldehyde, right? To a ketone. You guys remember what a ketone was? So we moved the oxygen and the hydrogen down to the center of the molecule. It was a double bond oxygen now, which makes it a ketone, which now turns it into fructose. So cool. Remember I told you fructose has the ability to come in? This is where the homie comes in. Skates right out. Fructose. That's it. What would you think this guy's called? You know it's fructose. Got a phosphate on the 6th carbon. Yeah. Man, you guys. Fructose, 6 phosphate. All right. So G6P, F6P. Now, this step is reversible. It's important to know. We can go back and forth there. So if we have fructose come in, we can turn it to G6P. We can go to the pentose phosphate. But we can move and groove here. This next step, you cannot reverse. So this next step, one way. No idea why I just blacked out and did that. I was signifying the importance of it. This next step is so important, you will have to remember it for the rest of your life. This step right here, this enzyme is called phosphofructokinase. Tell me what's that? That is what we, oh, I want brown. Phosphofructokinase, PFK1. There's 2 of them. Phosphofructokinase, rate limiting step. Stay with me. Phosphofructokinase, rate limiting step. Phosphofructokinase, rate limiting step. Phosphofructokinase, rate limiting step.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
All right, whatever. You guys are boring. Phosphofructokinase, rate limiting step.
Is that a 1?
That is a 1. And you have to signify 1 because there's a 2.
Right.
And then with a 2, oh, you made me do it.
Sorry.
Hello, steric and hormonal. Man, didn't want to go there just yet. PFK, rate limiting step. What did I say here? Phosphofructokinase. What's happening here, business major? We're losing money again, right? So we have ATP going to ADP. What else would you think we need here as a cofactor? Magnesium. This is so important. Okay? We'll finish off this last molecule, then we'll talk about these other things over here. Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay, my bad. Peripheral failed me. We know we have a 6 carbon. Now, we just gained another phosphate, right? So we added one on the 1 carbon. What do you think this molecule is called? It's fructose, right? What do we call this guy? Fructose. One, 6. Bis phosphate. Why bis?
There's 2.
There's two. The difference between bis and bi. Bis means that there's a carbon in between. There's space. If it's bi, it would be 1,2. So if it was fructose 1,2 biphosphate. But because there's space, it's bis. That's the difference. So it tells you there's space in between. Okay? We good up to here? Yes, sir.
What was it called again?
Fructose 1,6 bisphosphate.
Was it F16B?
You could do F16B if you want, 100%. But generally, I would say BP, so you understand that there's a bis there. All right, so real quick, little sidetrack before we get into the hard stuff. When you hear the word oxidation, what does that mean? When we're oxidizing something.
Gain of electrons?
Taking away,
Hydrogen?
well, you could say, I guess you could say that. But we're moving protons. We're removing. Oxidizing, we're breaking down. When we're reducing, we're adding. Sometimes when we think of reduction, we're like, but just try to just remember it. When we're oxidizing, we're taking away. When we're reducing, we're adding. Here comes to the twister here. For a majority of what we go through, this is what we have to remember. For other situations, why it can get somewhat confusing, like when we get to the electron transport chain and we start going deeper into hydrolysis, and this is why I love this. For oxygen, it's backwards. Just so you know. But right now, get that out of your brain. Okay? We're taking away a proton, we're adding it for reduction. Okay? Cool, we're good. Hormonal stimulators. Because this has to be run by something, right? We already know. Insulin, glucagon. Insulin and glucagon are hormonal stimulators, right? They have affinity. They come in to turn this puppy right on. Well, allosteric stimulators are kind of like the back end aspects of turning things on. And we're going to go over each one. I just want you to know. And why I tell you PFK1, because PFK2 is an allosteric stimulator for glycolysis. And we'll go into more of allosteric stimulators. But right now, we already know hormonal, right? We know insulin and glucagon. And we know allosterically PFK2 can turn this process on and shut it off. And generally, they do it with phosphate. So we'll get into all that. Okay, cool? All right. What am I in? Purple. All right. You guys ready?
Yes.
Yeah. I like your motivation. So, let me just draw this guy up here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller just because I have to split some things up. So we have our fructose 1,6 BP. Now, aldolase. An enzyme called aldolase splits the 6-carbon molecule into 2 3-carbon molecules. Okay? Why? I wish I knew, but that's just what happens. Some things we'll never get an answer for. This guy had said so. We follow it. So we're splitting this up into 2 3-carbon molecules. This is your DHAP and your G3P. Dehydroacetone phosphate. Glycerolaldehyde 3-phosphate. Okay? We're splitting it up. This is where people get confused. Here is a triose phosphate isomerase. This isomerase has the ability to switch these molecules back and forth. Why is that important? Because it can take these molecules, and just so you guys know, for S and Gs, right? If we need to make glucose, we have the ability to take this G3P, put it to DAP, make glycerol, then it will go through gluconeogenesis, and we'd make glucose, right? If we need to formulate, it can go here when we're talking about lipogenesis, the DJP, formulate. It has the ability to go back and forth. This also has a whole another pathway that's so thick. But my premise is it could do whatever it needs to do when it needs to do it. So it gives it flexibility. That's why it splits. DHAP, dihydroacetone phosphate, or G3. Look, in the reality, guys, yes, ma'am.
What did you call it that switches it back and forth?
It's an isomerase. So remember, an isomerase internally just moves some things around. That's all it does. And moving forward, nomenclature-wise, this is the only one I need you to remember, nomenclature-wise. You can remember acronyms from here on out, okay? Because if you remember the acronym, push comes to shove, you'll be able to figure it out what the acronym means. But you have to remember phosphofructokinase, PFK, okay? So, we split this molecule, we got 3 carbons. Now, essentially, if I wanted to, and how you'll see it in some literature, some people will just draw this underneath this. Some people will draw 2 of them simultaneously. It doesn't make a difference on how you learn it. I'm going to keep it simple like this. What we need to know though, because this shifts into this, we now have 2 of these. Because we have 6 carbons. So regardless on how I wanted to draw it, I could do this. Either way you look at it, I would have 2 of them, okay? So it doesn't make a difference on how I lay it out. Just know that I have 2 of them because we have 6 carbons here. So there's 2 3-carbon glyceraldehyde 3 phosphates, okay? We on the same page there? It's got 2 of them. Got 2. Got 2.
Is that because DHAP just always becomes G3P eventually?
Yes.
Can it sometimes do other stuff before that?
Most of the time, no. It will go to G3P. For whatever reason, and a lot of the times, and you're getting complicated, you're going to confuse people, but if we need the shift, it'll make the shift. And this will dynamically happen during gluconeogenesis.
I guess what I'm confused is like, what does it make DHAP? Is it just because it can use it?
It's just what it does.
Alright.
I wish I knew why. Like, why didn't we just split the 2 and just go to G3P? That would be more efficient. But if we did that, we eliminate the ability to have DHAP as an asset. Okay, so that's the big difference there. So we need to do this because if we need to use DHAP for whatever reason, making alternate energy sources, we have the ability. But when we're running glycolysis, and we don't need to because we're going to run glycolysis, that DHAP goes right to G3P. Okay? For everything until we talk about gluconeogenesis, we know that DHAP goes to G3P. And we have 2 of them. Okay? We're on the same page there. It's usually the hardest concept to wrap your head around. Just like, but just accept it. All right? So, moving on. This next step, you have to remember. That G3P, the enzyme behind that, oh, check this out. G3P DH. What do you think that DH means? Dehydrogenase. What does that mean? What does dehydrogenase mean? We're adding a hydride. That's it. What is a hydride, Tony? It's a proton and 2 electrons. So we're taking NAD plus and we're turning it into NADH. This, we can't make magic without this. What is NAD?
B3 or niacin?
It's niacin B3. Please write that down. Niacin B3. What happens if you're deficient in B3?
You can't do this step.
You can't do the step, and you get a disease called beriberi, which is a wet and dry. One's intestinal, one's neurological. Horrible, horrible disease. I don't want it. So, very important. That's why they say, so, and this is the thing too, and this, we'll get into this later, but I'm going to throw this out there now. Like, you taking more B3 as a supplement doesn't make this better. You taking B3 as a supplement would only be beneficial if you're deficient. So you going to take a B complex just for S and Gs doesn't make glycolysis happen more efficiently. If you were deficient in B3 for whatever reason, then it would help out for sure. And that's the whole concept about vitamins and minerals anyway. All right. So, there's one other thing that happens here. And I forgot to draw them up here too. Yes. So in this step, we add an inorganic phosphate. So just so you know, like we have a lot of phosphates floating around when we can assimilate or break them up, and they're around. So where does this come from? They're just floating around the cell, okay? So we add a phosphate to this step. So we have one phosphate on the 1 carbon. This phosphate over here is on the 6 carbon, which essentially is now the 3 carbon, right? So, oh, purple. Let's go. So, what would this molecule be called? So we have a phosphate on the 1 and the 3 now. So what do you think this would be called?
G13P.
I like that, but this is a glycerol aldehyde. So we 1, 3. Biz. Phosphoglycerate.
Does it become that during the NAD plus to NADH part or after?
So it's almost separate to think about it, okay? So when we're talking about this dehydrogenase is adding the hydride to the niacin molecule. That's on its own. This you're going to find out is beyond one of the most important steps that we need, because without this Mac Daddy over here, we can't pump a hydride into the electron transport chain. It's our big energy producer with oxygen present. You guys are going to hear that, and we'll go over the physiology behind it at a later point. Without oxygen present, we're going to use this. We're going to use this molecule for something else. So, with that being said, this is separate. This phosphate adding into here creates this molecule. So we have this 1,3-bis-phosphoglycerate, because that's all this is, was glycerate, right? Now, after that, and believe me as I tell you, when we're moving forward with these other molecules, these next steps, so these other glycerates, I'm not really too concerned about you remembering all of them. Mainly because, I mean, they're important, right? But if I had you to focus on something, I'm going to have you focus on the main constituent points, right? For right now, okay? Does that make sense? People last semester were like, well, if I don't need to know, why are you telling me? Because guess what happens when somebody else tells you after this? It sticks. So you got to, like this, you have to hear over and over and over again. So just be aware of that, all right? But if you're going to fill brain space up, PFK hexokinase for right now. All right, so 3 carbons. We have a phosphate on the 1, we have a phosphate on the 3. Now, businessman, we're gonna have a kinase here. So phosphoglycerate kinase. All I want you to remember on here, that there's a kinase here. What's gonna happen now?
We use ATP?
We're gonna what?
Use ATP?
Eventually we gotta start making money again, right?
Producing?
We're gonna start making money back.
Yes.
Hell yeah, because we got an extra phosphate over here. They don't need to be there. So all this is a phosphoglycerate kinase, right? If we do that, we need magnesium, right? We're gonna take off one of these phosphates, and we're gonna make money now. What color am I making money? I'm making money in brown. So we're gonna take off this guy and make, ooh, you better back up, ATP. Now, the trick to that question, how many ATP did I just make money on right there?
2.
2.
Both
Hell
sides.
yeah. 2. So now, real quick, let's count them up. How many phosphates did I lose here? How much money I lost? Just 1. How much money did I lose here? 1. So collectively 2. How many did I gain back here?
Oh my goodness.
We're even now. Game time, right? Stock market's getting ready to go up though. We're invested. So, if I lost this phosphate, what do you think this is called? So we don't have to worry about the biz, right? So we lost that phosphate there. It's on the 3rd carbon. What do you think we call this guy?
3 bis
We don't
phosphoglycerate.
have to worry about biz anymore, right? Because there's not 2 of them.
3 phosphoglycerate.
That's it.
It's only removing 1 phosphate, making 2. Is that because it's making?
Well, because remember, there's 2 3 carbons there.
Yeah.
So you're removing 1 from each of them.
It's that one, and then the DH.
And then essentially, yeah, if I was I could draw this simultaneously and do the same thing. I just think it's unnecessary for me to draw the same thing twice. So we're gaining 2 off of the 1 carbons. So now we have 3 phosphoglycerate. You see it, like, it's cool. Are we on the same page? Are we tracking for the most part? I'll take that. I'll take that 100%. You're going to hear this 50 more times in this class. So if I could take this right now, it's going to be this by the time we're done. All right. So 3 phosphoglycerate. Now, the cool thing about this, let me put my phosphate on there. The cool thing about this, nothing really exciting happens on this next one, right? The only thing we do is we're moving the phosphate. And what I want you to know when we move phosphates, it's a mutase. That's it. So we move the phosphate from the 3rd carbon to the 2 carbon. So guess what this next step is called? Take a guess.
2 phosphoglycerate.
2 phosphoglycerate, that's it. Why does it have to be so long? Cool. Now, like I said, if you remember this, awesome. It's kind of simple to remember. If you remember it, cool. This next step, get your brain ready. Put it really deep. PEP. Phosphoenol pyruvate. PEP. Phosphoenol pyruvate. Why is that important? I'll tell you since you asked. Because PEP is where we bring molecules in from gluconeogenesis. Please remember PEP. You're going to see it again and again.
Can you say again what you just said?
Phosphoenol pyruvate.
Yes, but we're going to bring in, constituents from gluconeogenesis. They're going to come into this stage. Okay? Super important. You're going to see it again. Now, this here is an enolase. Tony, what's an enolase? It's nothing that we really need to understand. Is just so you know, like if you forget it, cool, no worries. But just so you know, so you have this is the carbon, just kidding. You have a double bonded oxygen to it and a hydrogen, and what it does is it cleaves off this hydrogen and adds the phosphate. That's what an enolase is. Who cares, right? So pyruvate enol phosphate. Phosphoenol pyruvate. Cool? PEP. PEP is so easy. It's gorgeous. So now, open your brains back up one more time. Yes, sir.
What's the difference between that and 2-phosphoglycerate?
Well, the only difference is because we removed the hydrogen and we added the phosphate. So we converted it, really. That's where the enolase comes from. So we moved some things around. Is it relevant? It's yes in the sense of you needing to understand molecular structure on how we accept other molecules, but it's not really relevant for this class. It won't matter in nutrition world. It doesn't change anything. All right, you guys ready for this last step? Last step. How many steps is glycolysis? Pull that thumb out. 10. All right, after this one, I'm going to show you. Pyruvate kinase. What do we need here? What's happening? Kinase. Kinase, what's happening?
Breaking down.
Simple. You don't get complicated on me. That's the business major.
Making ATP.
Let's go! That's it! It's time to get paid. This is where our money comes from. This is where we're netting our ATP here. So ADP is making ATP. We're stealing these phosphates right there. So we're concluding with 2 of these, right? These are our 2 ATP. Now, one of my last tricks of the day. Magnesium. Potassium. Potassium is needed for this final step.
Magnesium and potassium?
Magnesium and potassium. Very important. Okay? Super, super important. That's it. There's your 10 steps. All right, let's go through, before I go into lactate and go further, let's go through it one more time. Okay? Glucose goes into the muscle cell via the GLUT4. Insulin stimulates it, right? PI3K, AKT stimulates the GLUT4. When glucose gets into the cell, the enzyme hexokinase steals some money with the help of the cofactor magnesium to make our first starting substrate of glycolysis, which is called G6P. Okay? After G6P, we shift some things around, and then we make F6P. Okay? Cool. We're cruising. This has the ability to shift back and forth. After F6P, rate limiting step. It only goes one way. Phosphofructokinase, PFK1. We make F16BP, fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. Fructose 1,6-bisphosphate then gets split into 2 3-carbon molecules. This 3-carbon molecule converts into G3P. Just flops over through this isomerase. So cool. So now I have two G3Ps, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphates. I have two of them. We get this enzyme, G3P dehydrogenase. So it comes in here, it grabs a hydride, proton 2 electrons, and it throws it on this guy. Now we have NADH. Okay? Two of them. During this process, an inorganic phosphate sneaks through the back door, sneaks into the club. He gets in the club, he jumps on board. He likes to party. That's how he gets down. He's partying, converts this guy into 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate, because that's, remember this is just glycerate, right? This is a glyceraldehyde. 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. 1 carbon, 3 carbon. Then we have a phosphoglycerate kinase, magnesium, ADP to ATP. Happens twice, right? So now we're even money. This, because we lost off the 1 carbon, turns into 3-phosphoglycerate. Cool. Well, all this phosphoglycerate does is mutase. We just move this phosphate to the number 2 carbon. That's it. Now we have 2-phosphoglycerate. Cool. Then we get this anenolase. Then we move some things around again because that's what we do. That's all metabolism is, right? It's movement and breakdown and adding of molecules. That's it. We now make PEP. 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 Cool. PEP is going to be an introductory spot for gluconeogenesis. We'll get there. So this phosphoenolpyruvate, then with the help of pyruvate kinase, and again, this last guy is a one-way step. It is a one-way street. Once we go from PEP, we get to pyruvate, that's it. We have pyruvate. PEP, with the help of pyruvate kinase and ATP, or ADP, making ADP because we steal this phosphate, we now have pyruvate. A cofactor is magnesium and potassium. Cool. We have 2 ATP. Is that a lot of ATP? No. But why is it effective?
It's fast.
It's extremely fast. Let's think about what are anaerobic movements. Who plays sports here? Cheerleading. Let's go. What sport do you play?
Did I win?
Do you? Did it?
No.
Did you?
Football.
Football. Let's go to cheerleading. Football's a good sport too. I don't know what position you play, but cheerleading is very explosive. You need glycolysis. What position were you?
Tight end.
Tight end needs glycolysis. Okay? They all actually do when you think about it. So, yes. Good. So we need to run this. Now, when we go oxidative, the aerobic system, it's very slow, right? So we can't produce a lot of ATP. But when we do, it's a ton of it. So it's very effective in that sense. But that's why, so it's only 2, but we're moving and grooving through it very, very efficiently. That's why having all these cofactors, vitamins and minerals, are extremely, extremely important. And again, I tell you guys, you want to talk all this macro jazz and count your macros, this and count, who gives a shit? Because without micronutrients, none of that works. We're so uber focused on how many carbs did you have today? Who cares? Eat your vegetables, right? You have to. Otherwise, this doesn't work. And wait till we get to the Krebs and electron transport chain. You're going to see it even more efficiently there. So it's so important that we stay uberly focused on this other stuff too, and not just controlling how much glucose we eat. Love it. But we have to worry about these other constituents. All right, cool. It went up. All right. Somewhere in between here and there.
Somewhere.
Okay, cool.
It's not there.
All right, what do we need to do? Where are we hung up?
Honestly, all of it.
All of it. Okay, cool. Let's go over it one more time.
Okay.
All right? So, what do you have for dinner now? What are you having for dinner now?
Rice, turkey.
Rice, boom, done, rice. You have this,
Only rice.
you just had this rice. This rice, you know how to break down rice in the body, right? So we're gonna take that sucrose with the sucrase, break it down to glucose and fructose, right? Now we have glucose running through the blood. Insulin's gonna help us out. It's gonna open up this cell. We're gonna bring the glucose in. Hexokinase is gonna convert the glucose, or not convert it necessarily, it's gonna, the easier term is gonna activate it, right? We're gonna take this phosphate off of ATP, right? So this is an adenosine, another glucose molecule, and 3 phosphates. So think of phosphate is our money. It's our currency system, and all we're doing is moving it around. It's like, it legitimately is like our internal stock market. We're just moving things around. And when we move them around, it shifts us through systems, okay? So we steal this phosphate and we put it onto this. It now says, cool, you're ready to rock. So that hexokinase does that with the help of magnesium. Because all a cofactor does is help finish off the process, and the easiest way to think about it, right? Because you know what an enzyme does, right? It's a catalyst, it speeds things up. Cofactors finish it off, okay? So, this glucose 6-phosphate, because the phosphate's on the 6th carbon, then gets converted with this isomerase, which it just moves things around. That's it, who cares? But it turns it into fructose. Cool. We have the ability that rice that breaks down, like say you eat a piece of fruit with it, that breaks down into fructose, you could use that and we could bring it in this way too. Like fructose is really cool. That's why it's called fructose. Like we have the ability to utilize that energy. So cool. So, and then we just convert it, right, to fructose 6-phosphate. Then after we convert it, we need this awesome rate limiting step, PFK1. PFK1, then with the help of magnesium and another phosphate, we make fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. That's it, we just make it. Magnesium helps again. Then, for whatever reason, because we want to complicate your life and only your life, we got to split it. Just to confuse us. Because why? I don't know. I don't know. It makes us stronger, though. That's what they say, right? Diversity and adversity makes us stronger. Cool. So, we split the molecule in half. One way goes to DHAP, the other way goes to G3P, but this DHAP just converts to G3P anyway. So now we have 2 of these. Cool. Are we good? Are we cool that you have 2 of them? What's better than 1? Duh. Absolutely. So at this point, this molecule here, with a dehydrogenase, so it's hydrogen, it's hydrolyzing it, right? We take this NAD plus and we add a hydride to it. So we just add a proton to it, essentially 2 of them, and we make NADH. You're going to see this over and over and over again. This is a big factor. While this process is happening, we throw another phosphate in there. Why? Let's add some more money to it. This phosphate comes in, we add it to this molecule, which is just a glycerol. Now we have 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. That's it, cool. So with this, underneath of that, we have another enzyme. It's another phosphoglycerate kinase, which means there's going to be money. At this point, we gain money back now. So we steal this phosphate that we just added. We still have the 3-phosphate here. We now have even money because we have 2 of them, right? So we now have even money. We're neutralized at this point. We're neutral. We paid off our debt. We're cool. All is great. So we have a 3-phosphoglycerate because it's on the 3 carbon. Then for whatever reason, because it's cool and it likes to test us and our patients, we got to take this phosphate and move it over to the 2. Whatever. I'll do what you want me to do. Now we have 2-phosphoglycerate. Cool. Let's move some things around again. We have the anetolase here. So then we move some things around. Now we have PEP, right? PEP is a very important step when we need to use other substrates as energy. That's what gluconeogenesis is. Gluconeogenesis, did I write it up? I did. Gluconeogenesis has the ability to use glycerol, and we're going to get to this now, lactate, What else would you think it could use as energy? Amino acids. Okay? We'll get to that. Leave that one. All right. So it will come to this PEP. So from PEP, we have a one-way road that we have to go down. That's pyruvate kinase. Now we make our money back. Now we have ATP. Now we can go play football. Now we can triple backflip with a double axle spin kick. Double flip. 10. Land it. Because you have glycolysis working. Because you ate your spinach with potassium in it. It's because you eat your meat with magnesium in it. Yeah, your rice. Okay? That's how you could do that stuff. Pyruvate. Now, the last question is, for art thou this pyruvate go?
Krebs.
Does it?
Yes.
Why?
Because it comes, I think, acetate or something. Acetate.
What? No. Yeah. No. Yes, but no. But yes, but no. So, when we are without oxygen, if we're just playing football, if we're just cheerleading, we are without oxygen. We do not need to go to the oxidative system, right? I will explain the physiology of what without oxygen means. Just remember, without oxygen. We are going to take that pyruvate and we're going to make something else.
So where does the pyruvate go?
I'm going to tell you right now. I love that you asked. This pyruvate is going to make what?
Lactate?
Lactate. Lactate has the ability to go to the liver through the Cori cycle, goes into a process called gluconeogenesis, and then we could utilize that as energy. We'll go into how that happens. That's all I want you to know right now. Lactate, Cori cycle, energy, gluconeogenesis. Num-nums. Our brain, our heart loves lactate. We're always producing lactate. Everybody's producing lactate right now. Our body loves it. You cool? That's how I feel about you, lactate.
What did you say about how the liver's involved with this?
Because it goes to the liver.
Okay.
Lactate is what makes it happen in the liver. Sorry, the liver makes it happen. That's what I'm going to say.
Does it also make like muscle pain too? If it's
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. No. No. Unpack that from our brains right now. So, all right, I'm going to get there. I love that. Yes. I love that you said that. Thank you.
Lactic acid doesn't make your muscles sore, it's the tears in the fibers. But there is lactic acid that's in that.
There's not lactic acid either.
There's not?
No, we're going to go over it.
What?
So, with this step, we have lactate dehydrogenase. 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 Where did we see dehydrogenase before?
G3PDHA.
Remember I told you it goes two places? Well, if we were jogging, we would be aerobic, right?
Like with a soft J.
Jogging, yes. Then we would take this and we would go to the Krebs cycle, we would go to electron transport chain. But we're not jogging, we're triple axle backflipping right now. We're catching wideouts, whatever tight ends run. So we don't have that present. So we're making lactate. We take this NADH down to here. We take that hydride off of that NADH. Get off me, come on, sucker. Ah. We take this NADH, we throw this hydride off, and we make this process happen. That pyruvate, with the help of that hydride, turns into lactate. But there's two of them. You don't say, Tony. There is.
Pyruvate with the help of what? Makes sense.
pyruvate with the help of lactate dehydrogenase. And there's clinical implications with this enzyme too. That NADH turns back to NAD plus because we threw a proton here, which made lactate. We put another one in our blood. Blood. Hydrogen in the blood. Cool. Now, you guys ready? Let's get really weird. Two things. Future medical people. We measure this in the blood. Big key factor. If we have extreme elevations of lactate dehydrogenase, primarily because we cannot go to the Krebs cycle, we cannot get oxidative. So we get a huge influx of lactate dehydrogenase, is our first telltale sign of myocardial infarctions. It could also be ischemic, and there's a couple other factors too. But ideally, I like you to remember of heart attack, okay? So that's a key factor there. Cool. Like all of this makes sense to some capacity. So and there's a lot of other things that happen in here, but we don't need to go there. But this is an important one to understand. Now, going back to your statement about the muscle burn. So, lactate without protons is lactate. Lactic acid, we have not been able to actually solidify that it exists. The hydrogen would have to assimilate with the lactate for it to be a lactic acid. That doesn't happen. We haven't seen it. We don't have much proof. So we don't use that terminology anymore. Biology, they do. Because they don't study the muscle components like we do. That's the big difference. So you might hear, like your biology teacher might say that. And that's okay. Let them, don't correct them. It's like, cool.
Was the assumption that when lactate becomes lactic acid, that's what burns the muscle?
That's what we thought, yeah. But it's like, mind you, we're new science. Like, we're not that old. So we're still figuring these things out. That's why things change. That's why if your face is not within science for the rest of your careers, you're already behind. Okay, don't be a dinosaur. And sadly enough, like, no offense to anybody, and this just happens, but a lot of older doctors, and not even older doctors, like doctors, they're working all day, every day. They don't have time to read research. So some of the stuff they might miss. Sorry, but stay in the research because we're forever changed. That was my premise. So anyway, let me give you guys what really happens here and what we know. And it's a little bit suspect right now, but this is what we think of so far. So, lactate, huge energy source. This, how muscle contraction stops. How many people here have crushed weights or ran where they feel like they can't flex anymore? Okay? How does that happen? Why does that happen? Is it done? We could run this. Ideally up to 2 minutes before we go oxidative. And then we have this association curve that goes along with that. But what happens here? Let me give you guys a quick little tidbit. I'm going to race to the liver. We're good here, right? See you, bye. So, this proton accumulation, I'm going to draw your muscle thing here. Here's your striations. Cool with that? So, this is myosin. This is actin. On top of actin, we have a little lock that we call troponin. Then we have a chain around the actin that we call tropomyosin. What activates this troponin is calcium. We need it, right? What we know right now, don't hate me if it changes, this proton accumulation has the ability to bind, and troponin has 3 different heads to it, don't worry about it. It binds here and blocks the calcium from attaching itself to the troponin head. So you can no longer flex your muscles. This accumulation stops this. So it's not the breakdown of fibers, it's not the accumulation of lactate, it's the accumulation of protons, as we know right now. And it's a theory, but it makes sense when you think about it. You're like, yeah.
So the accumulation of protons is what causes sore muscles?
No, it causes you to stop flexing. You crushing weights all day long causes you sore muscles. Your body's healing itself. Okay?
Tiny tears.
That's it. Microcytic tears. All right, cool. And then we'll get into this idea of when we have oxygen present, because this pyruvate will go to a thing called pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. Okay? And then we'll go into full detail on that in the Krebs cycle. Cool, what's up?
I just have more questions on that because
I got nothing but halfway answers. Go ahead.
so because they always say lactic acid. This is now it's not really true, but lactic acid builds up the muscle, so you want to like continue to stretch and work them out to burn off lactic acid. They say. What is it actually good for you then to like work out and stretch like the next couple of days to try to remove the pain? Or?
So it's still the same complexity because you're still trying to move these protons and utilize them as energy. Like we want to get those back into the electron transport chain so we could use them. We want to use them somewhere. We want to add that hydride back to NADH. We want to use them. We just don't want them leaving dormant. That's why this theory of movement works.
Is it would
Because
that
we're
help
using
heal?
those.
Will it help it like be less painful faster?
Most likely, yes. So that's why the idea of like, say you do this gnarly ass leg day, don't just go sit down and crush SpaghettiOs. Worst idea ever. Sounds great. Terrible idea. Because then try to go to the bathroom that next day. You can't. Like, I'm just gonna stand up. Take my best shot. Seen it 1,000 times.
Seen it.
No.
With your own eyes.
With my own eyes. All right. So. Cool. This is only 10 steps.
Feels like 50.
I get it. We still have. Yeah, I'm not gonna intimidate you. We're good. This is it.
I'm excited.
Cholesterol metabolism is 36 steps.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Too easy.
I wish the downside to like Krebs cycle. I don't know if you guys like mnemonics. Oh yeah. So speaking of mnemonics, there's a mnemonic for this, but it's super creepy, and I never like to talk about it.
It's creepy.
Yeah. It's like BBB kids lips,
What?
pink lips or something like that. Mother, father.
No.
Yeah, it's super creepy. Yeah, that's why I'll never use it. I'm like, somebody come up with something better than that. I tried, I couldn't, I'm not that creative. So if you guys can come up with a cool mnemonic.
Well, you can
please.
just like make a song out of the first word of the album.
That's perfect, do it. Let me know, you sing it. All right. So there's at least a mnemonic for the Krebs cycle, so that's pretty cool. Citrate is alpha ketoglutarate, or no, citrate is Krebs cycle starting substrate for making oxaloacetate.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Electron transfer, there's 4 complexes. That one's easy. It's everything else that we have to figure out that's hardest. All right, cool. You guys feel good? You feel better? I love that you just lied to me. I appreciate it. All right. So don't worry. On Friday, you guys will draw this. And then we'll get into glucagon. And then next week, we'll get into lipids. Woo! Woo!
What's that question of the day?
Question of the day. What is the rate limiting step for glycolysis?
Phosphofructokinase.
See? They weren't going to get that unless you told them.
Probably.
You blah. All right. Damn, we went through that was fast. Got my steps in. Got my steps in. Got my steps in.
Did you check the Celsius before this class again?
All day, bro.